decisions to bring your children along when you're in the army and you're moving a lot. That's a kind of childhood that's sometimes good for people and often bad for people, because every 3 years they move somewhere else. Completely irreversible. It has psychological effects. So come on, what is this? What is picking out this one and saying, oh, we've got to have laws against that? So I just regard that argument with contempt, as you can see. Now, when I'm arguing with Kathleen, I try to be polite, but it's a silly damn argument. And to say that these kids don't know what they're doing. Now, I wasn't like this, as you pointed out earlier. I came to this desire, which I then suppressed at age 11. A lot of kids, some girl from age 2 will be saying to her parents, I'm a boy. I'm not going to wear those damn dresses. And don't give me any cars. Any dolls. I want trucks. I want to play with the boys. How soon am I going to grow a penis? I'm a boy. I'm a boy. I'm a boy. And this is rather common. It's much more common than people thought it was. Well, what do you do with such a person? It's cruel not to allow him to be him. It's child abuse. Whereas in the state of Texas, it's now been determined by law that it's child abuse to help him. So the argument is, it is based on fabulous numbers that are completely phony. That these people, okay, Kathleen's an honest scholar, and she would be she wouldn't agree with what I'm about to say, but it's based on a fairy tale about how many people regret it. I've never met a transgendered person, and I know a lot of them, who has regretted it. Never once. And I know 100 of them. So, well, I don't know, maybe there's some sampling bias that I don't realize. Whereas Kathleen and this other character you mentioned, they claim, oh, no, it's very common. People regret it all the time. What a lot of nonsense.
We're all trying to figure out the truth here, right? And that I didn't know any of this information before talking to Helen.
Well, it's not information. It's fairy tales, dear. Much of it is. And you shouldn't just accept anything you read in the newspapers or everything you read in the newspapers or see online. She's got a lot of things wrong, believe me. And if she and I sat down together, and you were listening, you'd hear some of the things that I think are wrong. But the arousal of hatred against transgendered people is the cost of this. It's now look, I don't go along with the students at the University of Sussex said, oh, you're arousing hatred against transgendered people. I want you fired by the university. I absolutely am against that. But think of the analogies. White people said, black people are terrifying and criminal. I don't want them in my neighborhood. Men said it's appalling to suggest that women should have the vote. That would be scary and terrifying and awful. Jews were treated as vermin in Nazi Germany, as terrifying a secret conspiracy against good people. And on and on and on. Every time this homosexuals, you know this. I think you're old enough to remember straight panic about homosexuals. So if some gay guy approached you personally, you were authorized in the 1950s and 60s to kill him. no court in the land would convict you out of sheer irrational fear. Now, as a boy who hitchhiked a lot in the days when you could, I was approached by homosexual men, not all the time, but frequently. And I said, no, that's all. I wasn't raped. I wasn't. Kathleen has this vision of men sneaking around in ladies' rooms. I mean, Jesus, to perform rape. A rapist is going to rape and should be stopped regardless of where he is. The idea that he would get dressed up in women's clothes in order to rape people is just ludicrous. So there's a tremendous number of straight fear, irrational, backed, the TERFs say, by data, which they make up.
The claim, I mean, the just to be candid, the claim that I think I found most persuasive, and you very well may be correct about this, I'm open to changing my mind, was the claim that the majority of the children who were deciding to have these procedures ended up regretting it later in their life.
That's complete nonsense.
And if they are wrong about that, how are they so wrong? How are they
because by analogy with fear of blacks or Jews or women or foreigners or whatever, they've been aroused, and people believed Donald Trump's fairy tales about the what they call it, the mob. It wasn't the mob, some other word they used, the caravan of people from Central America approaching our southern border. I have a cousin who believed all that, who thought that they were mainly carrying drugs and were violent people. It's just, people believe a lot of stuff that ain't so. That Josh Billings, a contemporary of Mark Twain, said, "It ain't what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know that ain't so."
Yeah. Yeah. And is it your view that, if they are incorrect about this, that it has been wholly fabricated? And
no, it's not fabricated in the sense that they said, now let's see, let's make up some fake facts. No, they believe it. They think it's true. They believe what the columnist in the London Times says. They believe this stuff. It's not insincere. I wouldn't accuse Kathleen of being insincere.
Yeah,
and they're seriously worried, and that's why I draw the analogy with these other irrational fears. The fear by Southern men that black men were after their women, which, as you know, was a deep anxiety that justified lynching.
Yeah.
And understand, the TERFs and Kathleen are focused on the children, and I'm all for making sure that the children are helped as much as we can, although understand most of the decisions we make about children are never second-guessed by the rest of the society.
Yeah.
Most of the way you were raised had nothing to do with child. It wasn't the state bureaucracies who told your parents to do that. Whereas what Kathleen and her friends want to do is bring in the state to intervene in child raising in this particular respect. No other respect. You don't read to your child when they're small, they won't become readers later in life. There's probably some scientific proof of that. I just asserted, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
You don't read, Goodnight Moon to your 3-year-old, you're not going to end up with a reader at age 12. Now, that is an irreversible damage to the child. So let's propose an Office of Child Reading with secret police who break into your house at the time when your children should be to sleep should be going to sleep according to the state, and make sure you're reading to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Not to harp on this too much, but just to get to the genesis of, let's say all of these, public intellectuals like Helen, like Kathleen are wrong. And I don't know if this is the case, but perhaps it is, that they're all parroting an article that you just mentioned may have been in the Times. Is there a
London
of the London Times? Is there a clear, a clear genesis for a study that they are now all parroting?
Why should it be this way, dear? Why should I have to prove that this particular intervention in child raising, where some girl is some ex child has been saying since she was 2 years old that she's a boy, and her parents in their kindliness allow her to go to school as one, and the school is tolerant about this. Why should I have to defend that piece of child raising, whereas all the other supposedly, it's not even irreversible, but all the other definitely irreversible things that parents do to children for good or evil are not a state responsibility? Why should the state be involved? Why should the state of Texas have a law, as it does now, against helping children choose the gender they want? I mean, I just don't see. It's weird in the sense. Look, here's an analogy. The supposedly Christian opponents of homosexuality choose 2 verses in the Hebrew Bible and 1 in the New Testament, and hang all their analysis and hatred of homosexuality on those things. Now, ask yourself, there are, 615 commandments and prohibitions in the Hebrew Bible. Is it 615? Something like that. Why aren't these people Orthodox Jews? Why don't they separate meat and milk? Why don't they have ritual baths after their periods? Why don't they go to the shul? Right? If you understand the analogy,
I do.
They're picking out one thing which they don't like. Well, the TERFs are doing exactly the same thing. They're picking out one item among the various things, and we've all been children. We all know about this. The various good things and bad things. My great virtue is that I chose the correct parents, but they choose this one thing, and then they want to bring in the state.
Yeah. I know we're getting somewhat short on time here, so I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about maybe 1 or 2 final subjects. But from your perspective, what is the state? What is the country? What is just the correct philosophy in general to have about these subjects? Obviously, this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, and it gets people extremely emotional. It's part of the reason why I enjoy talking to people like you one-on-one in depth, because I feel like that is just personally my preferred way of learning. And
you mean the trans issue?
The trans issue, yeah. What's the right path forward here in your
the right path forward is to leave people alone. And the right path forward is no slavery. The right path forward is no masters. that's the core of liberalism.
Yeah.
As devised rather suddenly in Northwestern Europe in the 18th century.